Lessons with Miss D, we are going to learn how to sequence a story or put the events of the story in order. So you just watched Simon's Cat, Crow, and the episode Crow. And so now we're going to take Simon's Cat and we're going to sequence it or put the events in the correct order. So let's look at the different events. So we have, these are different events that happened in the Simon's Cat episode. The cat tricks a crow and puts a clothespin on the crow's beak. The cat is on the fence when the crow flies next to him. Simon's cat tries to open the gate but falls and holds on with his paws. The crow gets a pair of underwear and throws it at the cat's head. The crow poops on Simon's cat, and the crow tickles the cat's paws with a feather. So remember, you can always rewind the video and go back to Simon's Cat, the cartoon, so that you can see which happens first. So if I want to take these and put them in the correct order, I need to find out which one is the first event. If you said the cat is on the fence when the crow flies next to him, you're right. That was the first thing that happened. So now let's try and see which one happens next. Out of the cat tricks the crow and puts a clothespin on the crow's beak. Simon's cat tries to open the gate but falls and holds on with his paws. The crow gets a pair of underwear and throws it at the cat's head. The crow poops on Simon's cat, or the crow tickles the cat's paws with a feather. If you said the next thing was that Simon's cat tries to open the gate but falls and holds on with his paws, you're right. So now we're not looking at these first two, but let's look at the next four and see which one happens next. If you said the next thing that happens is the crow tickles the cat's paw with a feather, you're right. That's what happened next. So now let's look at the last three and see what happens after that. If you said, yeah, I don't need to move for this next one because the next thing that happens is the crow gets a pair of underwear and throws it at the cat's head, you're right. So now we have two left. The crow poops on Simon's cat, and the cat tricks the crow and puts a clothespin on the crow's beak. So let's see, are they in the correct order or do they need to be fixed? If you said they need to be fixed, then you're right. Now we have all of our events in the correct order. The cat is on the fence when the crow flies next to him. Simon's cat tries to open the gate but falls and holds on with his paws. The crow tickles the cat's paws with a feather. The crow gets a pair of underwear and throws it at the cat's head. The cat tricks the crow and puts a clothespin on the crow's beak, and then the crow poops on Simon's cat. And this is how we sequence events. We're going to try the same thing, but with a book next.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Storytime Book Club. Today we're going to be reading Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, written by Judith Viorst, illustrated by Ray Cruz. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair, and when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car in his breakfast cereal box, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But in my breakfast cereal box, all I found was breakfast cereal. I think I'll move to Australia. In the carpool, Miss Gibson let Becky have a seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said if I don't get a seat by the window, I'm going to be car sick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At school, Miss Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. At singing, she said I sang too loud. At counting time, she said I left out 16. Who needs 16? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said Philip Parker was his best friend and Albert Moyle was his next best friend, and that I was only his third best friend. I hope you sit on a tap, I said to Paul. I hope the next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone, the ice cream part falls off the cone part and lands in Australia. There were 2 cupcakes in Phyllis Parker's lunch bag, and Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds. And Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on top. Guess whose mother forgot to put in dessert? It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. That's what it was, because after school, my mom took us all to the dentist, and Dr. Fields found a cavity just in me. Come back next week and I'll fix it, said Dr. Fields. Next week, I'm going to Australia. On the way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot, and while we were waiting for my mom to go get the car, Anthony made me fall where it was muddy, and then I started crying because of the mud. Nick said I was a crybaby, and while I was punching Nick for saying crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and fighting. I am having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, I told everybody. No one even answered. So then we went to the shoe store to buy some sneakers. Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes, but then the shoe man said, we're all sold out. They made me buy plain old white ones, but they can't make me wear them. When we picked up my dad at his office, he said I couldn't play with his copying machine, but I forgot. He also said to watch out for his books on his desk. I was careful as could be except for my elbow. He also said don't fool around with his phone, but I think I called Australia. My dad said please don't pick me up anymore. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There were lima beans for dinner, and I hate lima beans. There was kissing on TV, and I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes, my marbles went down the drain, and I had to wear my railroad track pajamas. I hate my railroad train pajamas. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow that he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom said some days are like that, even in Australia. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this story, and please don't forget.
So we just listened to Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. And so now we're going to sequence the story, which remember means putting the events in the order from what happens first to what happens last. So we're going to read through these and see if we can figure out what happens first. We have Mrs. Dickens likes Paul's picture better than Alexander's. Alexander's night light burns out. Alexander yells at Nick and Anthony on the playground. Alexander does not find a prize in his breakfast cereal box. Alexander finds out that he has a cavity. Alexander moves to Australia. Paul says that Alexander is not his best friend anymore. Alexander wakes up with gum in his hair. Alexander finds out that no dessert was put in his lunch. Alexander gets soap in his eyes. So let's go through and see if we can figure out which one happened first. And you'll notice there's extra ones, so some of them won't be used. But remember, if you need to, go back and listen to Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, if you need to figure out the sequence of events. So what happened first? If you said 1, that Alexander wakes up with gum in his hair, you're right. Because in the very beginning of the story, it says, I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. So right on the first one, we're going to write gum in hair. Okay. Now let's look at what happens next. If you said the second thing that happened was Alexander doesn't find a prize in his breakfast cereal box, you're right. Because the next thing that happens is it says, at breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray card kit in his breakfast cereal box, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But in my breakfast cereal box, all I found was breakfast cereal. So right on number 2, we're going to write no prize. So remember that's number 2. Okay, how about the third thing that happens? Remember, not everything that happens is going to be in here. So figure out what happens next out of these choices. If you said number 3 is Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture better than Alexander's, you're right. So this is, we're going to write picture. Because next it says, at school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of a sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. Gee, I wonder why. Okay, what happened after that? If you said number 4 is Paul says Alexander is not his best friend anymore, you're right. Said that I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said that Philip Parker was his best friend and that Albert Moyle was his next best friend and that I was only his 3rd best friend. So not best friend. Okay. How about what happens after that? So think about what happens after he says that. And if you said number 5 is Alexander finds out that no dessert was put in his lunch, you're right. I don't know why he's doing that. So number 5 is no dessert. Let me fix my E. There we go. All right. And after that, what happens next? after he doesn't get any dessert. And he goes somewhere after school. And if you said that number 6 is that Alexander finds out that he has a cavity, you were right. So number 6 is cavity. And how about what happens after that? And you'll notice this next part, they kind of skip some things that happen. They skip him not getting the shoes he wants and going to his dad's office. So think about what happens towards the end of the day. Number 7, because he takes a bath and he gets soap in his eyes. So number 7 is soap in eyes. Because it says, my bath was too hot, I got soap in my eyes, my marble went down the drain, and I had to wear my railroad train pajamas. And he hates those. Let's see if you can figure out what the last thing that happens to him is. If you said that number 8 is that his nightlight burns out, you're right. Because it says, when I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. So that is nightlight. And they tried to trick us, but we weren't fooled. Alexander doesn't move to Australia, and he doesn't yell at Nick and Anthony on the playground. That doesn't happen. So that is, if I put all these events in order, we know that Alexander got gum in his hair, then he had no pies in his breakfast cereal box. Mrs. Dickens didn't like his picture. Paul said that he wasn't his best friend anymore. There was no dessert in his lunch. He had a cavity at the dentist. He got soap in his eyes taking his bath, and his nightlight blew out. He was having a really bad day, and that's the order of things that happened. So that's all for today's lesson with Miss D on sequencing a story. Join me again when I do another lesson. Bye.